Indeed, it's a great privilege and honor to welcome His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Ackermann, our distinguished educationalist, visionary, and founding Vice Chancellor Dr. Rajkumar, author, academic, and TV personality Dr. Sriram Chaulia, Dr. Sridhar Patnaik, the registrars of the university, my very distinguished colleagues from Jindal University, and enthusiastic students, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and privilege, and like you, I'm very enthused by the fact that such a qualified and specialized personality who's dabbled into international affairs in various continents and countries is here to give us some of the practical aspects about international relations. I say that, if I may set the tone for the interaction, because we live in a very, very complex and cumbersome world, which, because it has become so interconnected due to social media, I would say that there is a lot of demand and expectation from all leaderships, which brings us to the point that even though multilateralism is ebbing and seems to be eroded into, we can't have a position where the leaders of 193 UN member countries dominate the show. Today, in our interconnected, I would say, aware societies and communities all over the world, even in distant Africa, even if they don't have access to mobile connectivity, they do witness the conditions of luxury and comfort in the developed world. So to expect this mass to remain silent and to allow themselves to be dominated by some set narratives unfolded by or defined by some leaders, I don't think it will work. Which is why multilateralism, even if it is eroding, needs to be protected, needs to be fortified. Multilateral dialogue, ultimately, I believe, is what is going to save the world from war. Collaboration and cooperation cannot be avoided. And here, Ambassador, I'd like to refer to your country's visionary. I have often cited him, and it's none other than the Nobel Prize winner, Chancellor Willy Brandt, who in 1980 came out with a very visionary report on the North-South, and also later on the Common Crisis in 1983. The essence of this report is collaboration between the North and the South. And at that time, 40 years ago, he had envisioned a society where global economics would become very interconnected and interdependent. Can you imagine a situation where the multinational corporations of the world develop new goods and services every year? And if there is recession and lack of demand in the North, where are they going to sell their products, their goods and services? So at the end of the day, we do need an empowered South. We do need the populous markets of the South. So this kind of bridge building, this kind of conduit, this kind of understanding is very, very important. And at that point, at that time, so many years ago, he had also thought that the concept of security should not just be linked to defense and armaments. In fact, he believed that there should be a tax on global arms exports. There should be a registry, and the funds generated by those taxes would be used for global development. So these were visionary thoughts. I think we are coming back full circle today. And the G20 and other gatherings are but, recent phenomena which are going to examine some of these aspects. So with those thoughts, Ambassador, and also, of course, when we were in the Vice Chancellor's room, we were talking about the tangible and salutary contribution which scholars like Max Muller, who was a great Sanskrit scholar and who translated the Upanishads and brought Indian philosophy and spirituality to the whole world. I think we have a lot to learn from each other. And as a very, very vibrant democracy, both sides, as a populist democracy, you're a world leader, you're a European leader, a great economy, a lot of industry, innovation, research. I think we need to encourage and intensify the dialogue and interaction. And we'd like to see, as Vice Chancellor was saying, more Indian students going to Germany and vice versa. With these thoughts, Ambassador, I welcome you, and let me say it's a great privilege to have you address all of us. Thank you so much.
We are indeed truly honored to have Excellency, the Ambassador of Germany, with us, and that too to trigger some thoughts and ideas among our freshers. We have students from 21 states of India in this cohort of 2023. I have the long list, and I'm not going to read out the names of all the states. There are 155 odd students who have joined us this year, and some still coming in. And then the ones who are not here, I want to also mention them, our online master's program with Coursera, coming from an additional 30 or 31 countries. So this is truly the full range of India and the full range of the world represented in our student body in the School of International Affairs, and rightfully so, because international affairs should be as broad as possible in terms of representation of young people who are willing to learn and to study for their degrees. So I want to welcome all of you to this institution on behalf of the school. And we have the Vice Chancellor who will talk about the university as well. But let me say that with around 625 students now, including all of you, and close to 50 faculty members, JSIA has grown from a fairly small idea that began in 2011 to a fairly large institution with 6 degree programs. You all know we have 3 bachelor's degrees, 2 master's degrees, and of course the PhD. And so, and we continue to innovate and think about new types of offerings at the level of courses and degrees to be able to stimulate young minds and to prepare them for the world. So this is our job here, and I first of all thank you all for reposing your trust in this institution coming here, and you have many batches that precede you, cohorts that came before you who have done exceedingly well, and I have no doubt at all that you will follow in their footsteps and do wonders and miracles for yourselves, but also be great ambassadors for our country and the institution. Now, Germany and India and the EU, we chose this topic for Excellency for obvious reasons, because Germany is the leading power in Europe. You all know this. And in a way, it's a kind of a different sort of power, because it doesn't have the same kind of military might that France and Britain, for example, have had. But at the same time, because of its economic stature, because of its diplomatic prowess, because of its ability to convene such a large gathering of more than 24 countries, Germany has a de facto leadership role in the European Union. And individually as a country, Ambassador Thapa already mentioned extraordinary scientific and technological advances that Germany is known for. And in fact, if you follow Excellency's Twitter profile, it's called X now. We have all been, outdone by Elon Musk, and I hate the term X. But anyway, so if you see his profile, you will find just his activities. You can get a sense of the kind of things Germany is doing with India. I just browsed through it the other day and saw he has been to a vocational training center where German trainers and Indian skilled workers are helping to raise the knowledge and capacities of our industrial workforce. Then he was at electric vehicles event recently, and that's green energy, transportation revolution, adaptation to climate change. All these, again, Germany is the world leader, and India is doing a lot of cooperation with them on these in renewables and in alternative green technologies. Then we have seen earlier this year, Chancellor Olaf Scholz was here in February 2023. And it was a big occasion, and we were all talking about the Indo-Pacific outlook of Germany and of the European Union, and how strategically it's important, and how we would like Germany to also become a big player in our defense sector, apart from the booming civilian trade. And Germany is in the top 10 trade partners, and we expect many more German companies to come in. India is a big opportunity. And I think, given the fact that we are democracy, something that Ambassador Thapa was referring, there's a huge opportunity for Germany, India to become major strategic partners. We already are strategic partners, but I would say, compared to France, for example, the defense component is much stronger with France than with Germany. But I think looking at the future and looking at technology-driven diplomacy, tech diplomacy, and all these things that are coming up, I think Germany is the powerhouse that we will look up to for many, many solutions. And I'm happy to also report that one of our colleagues, Professor Mohsin Khan, I don't know if he's here. Yeah. So he has been actually engaging with the German embassy and taking a lot of our students. And we had the great privilege, thank you, Ambassador, for this especially, that when Chancellor Scholz was here, a group of JSIA students went and interacted with him. You know, these are the privileges of studying in a place like this, where you get to actually go and interact with top diplomats like Excellency who's with us, or even heads of state and heads of government, foreign ministers, defense ministers, ministers of trade and commerce, and so on. So I think it's a great advantage to study in a place like this, and you know it, but I'm still reiterating the point that the cooperation with the embassies is very critical to a school of international affairs, and we all try to maximize this in order to create chances for students. This summer, so many of our students have interned in lots of embassies and high commissions and consulates across the country. We have many proud alumni who are actually working full-time as local staff in embassies, consulates, and high commissions across the country. And of course, the embassies also become pipelines for us to build educational linkages with universities. So our IAGI office, for example, has been engaged in lots of MOUs with German institutions, and we hope to continue to make the two-way student mobility possible. So I'm just trying to give you a snapshot of the kind of concrete opportunities that come with collaboration from countries like Germany. And I want you to feel that this is not just a government to government or a business to business thing. You know, there's a strong people to people, especially young people. We were discussing how we can bring more German students to India, because Indian students going to Germany, Ambassador was saying that it's going to be close to 70,000. And that's a fair number for a European country. But then we would like to expand these things through institutional cooperation. So these visits are important not only to inspire you, but also we are trying, I'm simply saying that institutionally we are trying to set up a foundation that will generate more and more opportunities for all of you. So thank you all for being here and for kickstarting the new academic year. I wish you the very best, and of course we are eager to listen to the German ambassador about this very important topic. Best wishes.
I would like to, first of all, extend my heartiest congratulations to all the new students who have joined the Jindal School of International Affairs. The students have joined the BA Honours in Global Affairs, the BA Honours in Diplomacy and Foreign Policy, the MA in Diplomacy, Law and Business. To all those students who have been part of the doctoral program as well. It's a very defining moment for each one of you to be part of this institution, but also for us to welcome you to our campus, to the OP Jindal Global University, and indeed the Jindal School of International Affairs. I want to especially thank our chief guest today, His Excellency Dr. Philipp Ackermann, the Ambassador of Germany to India, for accepting our invitation and to deliver the commencement lecture. As you must have seen already, Dr. Ackermann is also an academic. I am particularly delighted to see that he did his doctorate in art history. And so it's also a celebration of humanities and social sciences for a person who has that background to be able to do what he is doing today. It reflects the kind of interdisciplinary education and how it can impact your future in ways that one can't even imagine. And that is also, it resonates with the vision of this university as well. While we are all keen and eager to hear the ambassador, and I'll try to keep it within my 10 to 12 minute slot, I want to quickly give you a brief introduction of the university itself. I want to begin by saying that all the students who have come from these 25 plus states of India and also different countries around the world, begin by thinking for a moment that where are you located? If somebody had asked you maybe a decade ago, maybe even 6 years ago, you will be coming into a university which is located in a place called Sonipat in Jagdishpur village in the state of Haryana. And that's where you will be spending good part of your few years of academia. And the same thing holds true for the faculty as well. You probably would not have believed it. You would have dismissed the very idea of the fact that you will end up going to a global university located in Jagdishpur village. In fact, that particular aspect alone should make you think that how India has changed and how we have been able to grow quite dramatically and transformatively to be able to build a global university right here. So it's important for you to know a bit of the history of this institution. There are several dimensions to it, but I'll keep it short. Nearly 2 decades ago, in the year 1998, I had the privilege to study at the University of Oxford, where as a student, I dreamt about the idea of building a university in India. I was hugely inspired by my education there. And then, of course, I went to Harvard and did another master's there. During that time, I had the privilege to know something that I'd shared with the ambassador about the history of global education and the evolution of the modern research university. While there are approximately 60,000 universities in the world today, the world of universities owes a huge debt of intellectual gratitude to Germany and to the evolution of the modern research university, which began in Humboldt. So the Humboldtian model of the modern research university is what that shaped and influenced the United States, Europe, and of course other parts of the world as well. So it all began in Germany when the idea simply went around the world. So in many ways, German higher education and German university system essentially influenced the idea of modern research university. And when I got to read a lot about it, I was hugely inspired by that as well. Of course, after I graduated from Harvard in the year 2000, I practiced law in New York. I simply was hugely inspired by the idea. To cut the story short, I spent the next several years as a lawyer in New York, as an academic in Japan, and then, of course, as an academic in Hong Kong. And during that time, I wrote a paper entitled Establishing India's First Global University, got to meet with an Indian benefactor by name Naveen Jindal in the year 2006, spent a year persuading Mr. Jindal to do 3 things. 1, to make a substantial financial commitment. 2, to do it in a not-for-profit manner. And 3, to let me have the academic freedom, autonomy, and independence to build a world-class university. As some of you know, Mr. Jindal was already a parliamentarian, but something more than that he did, which essentially empowered ordinary Indians to display their sense of patriotism and their commitment to the idea of flying the national flag. You must have seen the large national flag located on campus. That was possible because Mr. Jindal fought a very important case by name Naveen Jindal versus Union of India. After a decade-long struggle, he was in a position to fight for that right where ordinary Indians outside the governmental setup can fly and display the national flag. It took the Supreme Court of India to give that right to ordinary Indians because hitherto it was not available. Such was his own past work. I met him in the year 2006 and spent those years essentially engaging with him with the idea of building a modern research university, a multidisciplinary university, a global university with strong commitment to liberal studies, including humanities, social sciences, and law. To cut the story short, by late 2007, he agreed to all of it, invited me to move to India. Early 2008, I moved to India. And January to April 2008, I was trying to understand India myself as I was returning to India after a decade of living abroad. Very quickly, I realized the extraordinary complexity with regard to the governance system in India works, the complexity and labyrinth of regulations and rules and policies where the higher education system clearly was over-regulated and under-governed, and we simply navigated all of that process. There were moments when this idea was simply not in a position to take it forward. But by April 2008, I quit the job and we began the journey of literally building a university from nothing, from land acquisition, formulation of curriculum, course structure, program development, faculty recruitment plan, student admissions process, hiring of architects, construction engineers, contractors, and persuading the government of Haryana to pass a new law to establish the first private university. All of that happened during those 8 months. As late as 27th January 2009, the government of Haryana passed a legislation establishing OP Jindal Global University as the first private university here. And soon after, I was appointed as the first Vice Chancellor of the university. And then we began the process of recruitment of faculty, admission of students, and construction of campus. In a span of less than 6 months, we built over 100,000 square feet of built-up space, one of the fastest construction projects ever undertaken in the history of post-independent India, with then India's largest construction company, Larsen & Toubro, working 24/7 with over 5,000 people on campus. During the same time, we recruited faculty and admitted students. And as promised to Mr. Jindal, on 30th September 2009, we began the first academic session of the first school of the university. During the same time, he would come into campus, literally monitor the construction process to ensure that we were all able to have those buildings, and we simply had unlimited supply of Jindal steel to be able to build that campus in a very short span of time. On 30th September 2009, which was a very defining moment for us, we began the first academic session, believe it or not, with only 100 students, 10 full-time faculty members, 20 administrative staff, and 4 classrooms, and 1 office space for me, the Vice Chancellor, the 10 faculty members, the 20 administrative staff, which we now call the Big Bang Conference Room, which is located in the first floor of this building. That was the modesty and modest beginning we had, and where nothing was here in the then existing 54-acre campus. We never stopped since then. Year on year, we built a new school, the Business School, the School of International Affairs, the School of Government and Public Policy, the School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, the School of Journalism and Communication, the School of Art and Architecture, the School of Banking and Finance, the School of Environment and Sustainability, the School of Psychology and Counseling, the School of Languages and Literature, and the School of Public Health and Human Development. We moved from 100 students in 2009 to today, nearly 11,000 students in 2023. We moved from literally 10 full-time faculty members to nearly 1,200 full-time faculty members. We moved from 20 administrative staff to nearly 2,000 administrative staff. We moved from a 50-acre campus to a 100-acre campus. We moved from 100,000 square feet of built-up space to nearly 4 million square feet of built-up space. This journey, which we have entered into the 15th year of our institution building, has been possible because of the extraordinary and visionary leadership of our founding chancellor and benefactor, Mr. Jindal, but also the extraordinary contribution of our faculty members, many of whom are here. In fact, the dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs was somebody we were together in Oxford. He was doing his second graduate degree at Oxford, and I was a Rhodes Scholar and doing my law degree there. He was a Chevening Scholar. We literally met there, and he became part of the founding faculty team at the law school as a historian. And then, of course, we later built the School of International Affairs. The 5 aspects of our university that shaped our vision from the very beginning was, first, we are a global university. To be a global university means to have a global curriculum, a global course structure, a global program, a global faculty, a global research agenda, all of which promoting global interaction. These 1,200 faculty members that I talked about earlier, they come from 50 countries in the world, and they are full-time faculty members. In fact, it's 51 now. My HR just informed me that we have got 1 more new country represented in the faculty. They, of course, come from all states and union territories of India. The students who are here, the 11,000 plus, they come from nearly 60 countries in the world, and so it's an international community. But the global part of it is not just representation of students and faculty. We have extensive international collaborations with over 400 universities spread across 75 countries in the world, with whom we do 10 different forms of collaborations. They are faculty exchange programs, student exchange programs, joint teaching, joint research, joint conferences, joint publications, dual degree programs, short-term study abroad programs, inward mobility immersion programs, and joint executive education programs. We may not do all 10 with a single university. We may do 1, 2, or 3. If we end up doing more than 3 with a single university, they become one of our strategic partners, and we have few of them around the world. The second aspect of our university is our strong commitment to interdisciplinarity, something that you will see as you experience. And as first-year students, I hope you will make the best use of that. You walk around the institution, you will not find a single building calling itself as law school or business school. And that is the reason why it is so, because all spaces are interdisciplinary and shared spaces. In fact, the new faculty office block which we built, we took enormous effort to make it even more interdisciplinary when it comes to engaging between faculty members, and they all are together with a hope to build a community. The interdisciplinarity is not only in terms of physical spaces, but also with the intellectual ideas surrounding it. Every day after 4 p.m., we offer 400 cross-listed electives that are available for students across all schools and programs, so that you can, as students of international affairs, take a course on art history, like what our German ambassador did as a doctoral student. You can take courses in the law school, in the business school, in the public policy school, in the liberal arts school, in the journalism school, in the environment and sustainability school, in the psychology school. The idea of interdisciplinarity is deeply woven into our institutional culture. That's the second big point about JGU. The third aspect of our university is our strong commitment to research. We maintain a 1:9 faculty-student ratio. We have 55 research centers and 3 capacity-building institutes. Our faculty members are driving the research agenda. Their Scopus Index publications are phenomenal. Literally, in the last few years, we have over 500 Scopus Index publications by our faculty. For a non-STEM, non-medicine university, it's a new record of all sorts. And that also has driven the research agenda and the research grants that the faculty are receiving from across India and around the world. The fourth aspect of our university is our strong commitment to diversity, pluralism, and inclusion. Over 50% of our students are studying with some form of scholarship or the other. Access to high-quality education is absolutely critical. I've always maintained that I come from a middle-class family in India. The opportunity to study both at Oxford and Harvard without spending even $1, not because I didn't want to, but I couldn't have, that vision was so deeply embedded in my mind. Most of our faculty members who went abroad have been Erasmus Mundus scholars and INLAC scholars. The dean of our public policy school, Professor Sudarshan himself, was a Rhodes Scholar. So there are lots of our faculty members who pretty much ended up coming from those backgrounds, got the benefit of receiving world-class education around the world with scholarships, and hence we brought that vision and imagination to Jindal. Our own Chancellor, Mr. Jindal, was very conscious that how to ensure that we can provide greater access to students who simply can't afford to have that education here, and that's why the scholarship program became a robust program. Of course, the diversity of students and faculty are so critical. Over 55% of our full-time faculty members are women. Nearly 50% of leadership positions in the university are held by women. Also, nearly 50% of our students are also women. And that's another form of diversity which we actively promote besides, the nationalities and states they come from. The last aspect of our university is our strong commitment to bridging the gap between theory and practice, promoting experiential learning and opportunities for internships and capstone projects and other things which will enable our students to prepare themselves better for the future. As Sriram mentioned in his remarks, we take a lot of effort to connect the world to the campus and to the students, and connecting the students to the world and to people and institutions outside. This journey of 15 years has ultimately brought us to where we are today. We have been now ranked as India's first-ranked private university by the QS World University Rankings for the last 3 years. Are also as a recognition by the Government of India, as some of you know, nearly 5 years ago, the Honorable Prime Minister of India made a major public policy announcement in which the vision that he had was to identify 10 public universities and 10 private universities out of 1,000 Indian universities and give them the status of an institution of eminence with a view to propel them to become world-class universities. China did that 25 years ago. Russia did it a decade ago. Japan did it a few years ago. India, of course, was last in that list, but better late than never. So the idea was to create that opportunity, and after a very elaborate and transparent process, 8 public universities and 4 private universities were selected, and we were one of those 12, and we were the only non-STEM, non-medicine university which has been given the status of an institution of eminence. I want to end by saying that as we move into the 15th year of our institution building efforts, I want to share with you that we have greater plans and we are looking at the future. The next decade is going to be absolutely critical for us. We are in very, very serious conversations surrounding the vision of building and moving to STEM education. At least my own dream is to move towards looking at establishing what we are loosely calling the Jindal International Science and Technology Academy, in which we want to establish 10 more new schools: the Jindal School of Engineering and Technology, the Jindal School of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, the Jindal School of Data Sciences, the Jindal School of Natural Sciences, the Jindal School of Biotechnology and Molecular Sciences, followed by the Jindal School of Medicine, the Jindal School of Dentistry, the Jindal School of Nursing, and of course Physiotherapy, which ultimately will take us to 2034, which will be the 25th anniversary of OP Jindal Global University. Recently I had dinner with our Chancellor and I told him that 2034 will be important because we'll be celebrating our 25th anniversary, and I was of course seeking a lot of money from him for the next stage of development of the university, but I also said that I would like to retire by then, because that will be 25 years and that's a lot of work as Vice Chancellor. But on a more serious note, our vision of building these schools and to take that vision forward is aligned with the vision of the Government of India, the National Education Policy, and also recognizing that with 1.45 billion people, with the life expectancy of India increasing from the dawn of independence at 32 to now at 72, with 950 million people who are less than 35 years of age, the biggest challenge that India will be facing is our aspiration to educate young people and to empower them to pursue meaningful careers, both of which are so central and critical to where universities are located. And that is why it's important for us to invest in these most important ideas. And that's where Germany comes in. I want all of you to know that we have an extraordinary opportunity to be able to build partnerships and collaborations with German institutions. Some of the finest institutions in the world are located in Germany, but most importantly, it is a country which believes in the intellectual tradition and the intellectual culture. There is so much to be said about it. I want to end by reading a few words by an extraordinary man by name Max Müller. Max Müller was somebody who was a professor at Oxford. He was asked to deliver a series of lectures for the British civil servants who were planning to come to India. And so these lectures he delivered as early as 1850s and 60s in Cambridge, 1890s in Cambridge. And the title of the lecture was called What Can We Learn from India? And one of the quote, what can India teach us, is the theme of the lecture. And he says, and I quote, "If I were to look over the whole world to find out the country most richly endowed with all the wealth, power and beauty that nature can bestow, in some parts a very paradise on earth, I should point to India. If I were asked under what sky the human mind has most fully developed some of its choicest gifts, has most deeply pondered on the greatest problems of life, and has found solutions of some of them which well deserve the attention even of those who have studied Plato and Kant, I should point to India. And if I were to ask myself from what literature we, here in Europe, we who have been nurtured almost exclusively on the thoughts of Greeks and Romans, and may draw that corrective which is most wanted in order to make our inner life more perfect, more comprehensive, more universal, in fact, more truly human, a life not for this life only, but a transfigured and eternal life, again, I should point to India." And that's Max Müller. So in many ways, the kind of history and evolutionary relationship that we've had with Germany need to be revisited. And of course, as a lawyer, I'm also conscious of the fact that we in India owe a huge debt of intellectual gratitude to a distinguished German jurist by name Dieter Conrad, who was responsible for the Supreme Court of India coming out with one of the most innovative doctrines known as the Basic Structure Doctrine, which not only influenced the future of law and justice and jurisprudence in India, but also it impacted very many countries across the common law world. And so This is what Germany is and has been for us, and I can only hope that with the presence of our distinguished academic who is a German ambassador in India, we can only do many more things together. Congratulations to all the students and welcome to our distinguished ambassador. Thank you.
I'm extremely flattered and very honored to be here today, not only for the commencement speech, which I find a very great honor bestowed on me, but also because I was so nicely introduced. We Germans are rather blunt and direct, and when you hear all these wonderful words about you, you feel like getting a little dizzy. Frankly, I must say that, Professor Cholia, that you went through my Twitter handle and found something. I don't know who follows me on Twitter, but mostly it's about mangoes, actually. It's not about anything else. So basically, I'm very pleased that you did your research so properly and found other stuff. Now that the mango season comes to an end, maybe I will also improve on other stuff. You've seen the lecture, Germany, Europe, and India. It's the most boring, theme. And I will share a secret with you. When you don't know what you're going to say, when people decide that you will be holding the commencement speech, you just invent some boring title, and then you have to fill it. And I hope that I will fill it a bit when I talk about it now. But my main aim is that you now, the freshmen of this university, I would like to interact with you. After my words, I'd like to get into some conversation with you, answering questions or also ask you questions. Now let me start with two memories, two little glimpses of my past. One, in 2009, when I was the political counselor, I had the enormous privilege to be accepted as a guest at a famous Congress MP. And I was, I meant to talk with him about industries and his constituency and politics, basically. We ended up having a conversation on a university that this very member of Congress set up in this very year, namely this university. It was Naveen Jindal who invited me, and I must say I'm thrilled to bits to sit here in this university 15 years after my meeting with him and seeing it flourishing in such a way. So I must say congratulations. It is a fabulous achievement. And I'm full of admiration and respect for Naveen Jindal and his ambition that in 2009 sounded very utopian in a way, and look at where we are. I must say that I met the Vice Chancellor half an hour ago, so he gave me so much Greek career that I'm not sure whether I remember everything he wants from me. So he's a force of nature, and I think it's also due to him that East University is in this very, very fabulous state. Now my second memory, and now we are starting the lecture actually. I grew up in an era which historians now are calling the Cold War era, where basically the world was divided in two sides, and we lived rather peacefully, but also a little tense under a nuclear deterrence or structure. And when in 1989 the Berlin Wall came down, for us in Germany, and I was in my early 20s then, something happened that nobody ever would have imagined. Nobody ever would have imagined that this separation of the world would be done in a month, basically. And this is an event, this will be, always be a very, very strong part of my life. It was a landmark moment in world history. And I got politicized in this moment because I felt that, things can happen even though you don't have enough imagination to see that things like this can happen. And we basically, after this in Europe, there was a sort of a moment where everybody felt that this is basically the end of history. Now, you remember that was the title of a very important book then, that people felt that now we had overcome all divisions in the world, and the world is going to be a rational, sensible place in the future. We have learned that this is not the case, basically. And I think right now, 30 years later, a bit more than 30 years later, we are again at a landmark moment. We are in a deep crisis. The post-1990 world is in a deep crisis. And any unilateral moment somehow has passed, I would say. So we see the economic and military challenge posed by a rising China. It is increasing. The country is heavily investing into military infrastructure and large-scale infrastructure projects. You in India feel that more than we in Europe. We have seen Russia launching a war of aggression against Ukraine, and with this perturbing global markets, undercutting food security and driving inflation worldwide. Let me say here, you know, coming back to this memory of mine, we would have never thought that war in Europe after what happened between 39 and 45 would be possible anymore. Nobody would have thought that. It is as much a surprise to us that then 1989 was, in a way. I would add a third element to this landmark crisis in which we are. This is the impact of climate change. It is increasingly evident how strong climate change will impact all our lives. We mark more extreme weather conditions year after year, especially here in India. We are witnessing more and more weather-induced natural catastrophes, record high temperatures, droughts, flash floods, rising sea levels. And I think what we see also in a sort of a worrying development of concern, we see increasing political polarization and nationalism, anti-globalization movements that are all on the rise. In my country, we again would have never thought that a right-wing party, an extremist right-wing party would be popular, but now in the polls, in the current polls, they are at 20%, which is something in my youth would have been completely unimaginable. So we've seen developments in Brazil, in Trump in America, but all across Europe you have governments in Sweden, in Finland, where extremist right-wing parties are part of the government. So we have now to look away from Europe and shift our attention a bit to India for a moment. I think India, in a way, is also experiencing a landmark moment right now. India has overtaken the UK and is now the 5th largest economy by nominal GDP, and likely to overtake Germany and Japan in the next 10 years or so. One would say this is normal, a country of this size and population, but I think it's a huge achievement basically because it has developed over the last 15 years, and therefore it is remarkable. India is now the most populous country in the world, ahead of China, with the gap rising further. India has a much healthier demographic structure than China has, and therefore this is a competitive advantage to China. But there's also one aspect which is very interesting. The growing part of the Indian workforce is looking to other countries in order to get jobs. 10 to 12 million graduates each year in India cannot all be accommodated by the domestic labor market alone, and therefore they go elsewhere. Also, my country is a destination. We will talk about that later. I just want to say that the more Indians are abroad, the bigger the diaspora is in India, and the bigger India is also globally connected. That's one of the big advantages of India, is you have very powerful and influential diasporas all across the globe. Is that Australia or Singapore, but also in the West, in the UK, of course, but Canada, in the US, notably. That's a very, very strong advantage. And I think what you see is that with this economic development, and one of the good proofs of that is the current G20 presidency, global interest in India is clearly increasing. Ministers, leaders from across the world have basically flocked in India in the last month, and we have a very, very clearly rising media interest in India. So I think India has also, this government has made it a point to reach out to other strategic partners. Germany is one of them, but also others like France was mentioned before, the US, also the UAE, for example, is an important strategic partner. And I think what we see is that India has a growing role on the international stage and is a more and more indispensable factor in the geopolitical and geoeconomic world. Now, a word on Europe maybe in this. Europe as the European Union is a complicated construction. It is a construction that many people outside the European Union and some inside don't understand correctly. But it has proven to be a very workable umbrella of 27 nations that have found a common market, which led to enormous increase of prosperity amongst the non-so-developed, but also the developed nations. And it is the common policy shaping that the European Union, as difficult as that may be, makes it an international actor of a certain weight. And I see India in this, under this government, which is very foreign policy oriented, I would say, having a new attention, and developing a new attention towards the European Union as a partner. We see an FTA negotiations going on between the EU and India, but also politically seeing the EU as an actor more than it used to be. So Europe has had difficulties, but it has also, through the war in Ukraine, a unifying moment. It lived a unifying moment. I think there is, with maybe one exception, an agreement that this is unacceptable and that Europe has to stand together in this crisis. Another unifying moment was Brexit. I think everybody saw that this is a catastrophe for any country. Leaving the European Union ends in a very bad situation. And therefore, I think Europe as such found more strength. We are talking about enlargement. We are talking about other countries getting into the EU. And I would not be surprised that in 10 or 20 years the UK will rejoin the European Union, because I think they see that their idea of setting up a different shop didn't work out so well. So in this moment, I think, in this very tense moment in the world, I think it's the moment for India and Europe, the moment for India and Germany. Both of us have convergence of interest. I think we both play high value on democracy and freedom. We are advocates, both of us, of the rules-based international order and of international law. And I want to come back quickly to the impact of Russia's war in Ukraine on Europe, but also on the world. It has brought the tense geopolitical situation into regular households across the world. Impact of the war goes beyond the Ukraine proper. Attack on the global order, a huge challenge to global food supply. There's a risk of causing or escalating humanitarian crisis. And I think India and Europe share their conviction for the principles of the UN Charter and the sense of urgency in attaining peace. But let me at this stage also say we have convergences, but we are not the same. And this is very important. I'm convinced by the fact that democracies should be shaped by nations. So there are a couple of ground rules like elections and separation of power, but every nation has to find out the best way how to handle with democracy. So Indian democracy and German democracy are different, and so they should be. You have to find a way to bring a country like India in all its diversity, its diversity in religions, in languages, in ethnic groups, to bring it together. It's more difficult than a country like Germany, which is basically Tamil Nadu. This is our population. It's the same size also. So I think it's a challenge, and India mastered this challenge with a great admiration. But it should be different. It should be different of nature than a European liberal democracy. You can't compare our democracies. Even in Europe, you have big differences with the democracies. But Indian democracy is different from German or Swedish or Portuguese democracy. And one of the big differences, and maybe we can talk about that later, is that the Indian democracy is, in a way, a self-sufficient democracy. We in Europe, after 45, we started thinking in alliances. We thought that only through alliances we can move forward. Alliances of all sorts. We talked about the European Union, which is maybe the deepest alliance ever developed on earth between nations. But there is also NATO, there is alliance like the OSCE. There are different formats where Germany and its neighbors, feeling that they are small in comparison to the rest of the world, they feel that the getting together is more useful and powerful than staying on. With India being such a big country, the most populous country in the world, this alliance thinking is not so strong. I would say India is very clear in building up partnerships, but it has always a transactional element to these partnerships, saying where can we have mutual benefits of this partnership. So I will tell you that India has good relations with Israel and very good relations with Iran. That's a contradiction for European standards, but it's happening and it's possible also. In Germany, for example, a long-standing old relation with Iran, but it is always impacted by our relation with Israel. So our Iran relationship is not possible without thinking Israel. And that's a fundamental difference between the two, social systems or political systems between our countries. And I think it's a very important point to make because when media in Germany or observers in Germany, they see violence in India, they see now Manipur is coming, they see what happened in Gurgaon lately, and there is a growing fear, what is happening in India, what is this democracy doing, and there is a sort of nervousness because we have less, populations in Europe are more homogeneous than they are in India, and I keep telling my people back home that this is a deeply rooted democracy. It's a system that has proven over the last 75 years to work very well, and that situations are going out of hand here is more understandable than it would be in Europe to a certain extent, and therefore I think one should really develop a lot of trust in the Indian democracy and the Indianness of its democracy. So I would also say that another overlap between India and Europe is that both of them, India and Europe and Germany, recognize the need for technology advances and can work on it together if we increase labor mobility. I'll talk about that in a bit. India is amongst world leaders in economic sectors with the promising futures such as STEM, home to a high number of very skilled IT specialists. We would like to have some of them, and engineers and healthcare workers. We face shortages in these areas, and therefore you will see an increased activity of many countries, including mine, to attract Indian skilled labor on many, many levels to Germany. So I will say that on my desk, I have 4 big files right now. One is geopolitics, we talked about that. One is Russia, one is geopolitics, how do we work together with India on the Russia problem, on the China problem? How do we compare notes? How do we develop initiatives together? That's sort of the most obvious one. Second is business. Now, German trade volume with India is $32 billion. It's by far the biggest of any European country. The French have 12 billion. So it's really remarkable. We have 2,200 German companies, not only the big ones who you all know, like Mercedes and BMW, but also small and medium-sized companies here. But you should see that the China trade volume is 250 billion. So there is a huge difference between what we do with China and what we do with India, and that I hope will change. So that is one of my tasks, is to increase German business coming to India, but also Indian business coming to Germany. That's also very important, having investment from the very powerful, good Indian companies in Germany. So third is climate change and environmental protection, everything that comes along with it. I think Germany and India have decided on this partnership of green and sustainable development. We have a huge amount of money that is spent in India in order to improve the carbon balance, improve smart city initiatives. I don't know, some of you might be from Kerala, you have heard from the Cochin Water Metro, an electric boat metro that goes from island to island, that is financed by Germany. We finance, to a large extent, the metro in Bangalore and Ahmedabad also, and we have a lot of environmental projects, but the biggest chunk of money is going to energy providers who want to change their energy mix from less fossil to more renewables, and that is financed by German banks. And that's a very, very smart and extremely good development, and we see that working quite well in Rajasthan, but also in Karnataka, where people, Karnataka has now 65% of its electricity coming from renewables. That's a worldwide top standard. Yeah, it's really good. So that's what we want to promote. Together with our Indian partners, we want to promote this, energy mix, getting more renewable and less fuel. And the fourth file on my desk is migration. I alluded to it before. Germany thinks that we need 400,000 migrants a year in the coming 15 years in order to sustain our level of prosperity, because we have such a bad demographic development, and in former times EU countries went to Germany, Polish and Romanian and Italian workforce, but now these countries also have a very bad demographic development, and they also have a growing prosperity, so people don't need to go elsewhere so urgently, and therefore I think we will look to many countries, including this one, India, for more skilled labor in Germany. And I think that all shows that India is very much on our radar screen right now. We had, as Professor Cholia mentioned, Chancellor Scholz came last February. He was received by the Prime Minister. We had the Foreign Minister here for twice. Chancellor Scholz will come again for the summit. We had the Minister of Labor and Social Affairs, who is responsible for migration, coming here. We had the Vice Chancellor and Minister for Economic Affairs coming here last week, or 2 weeks ago. So there is a lot of a new, renewed interest and new attentions towards India. Also, the Minister of Defense, because you mentioned that the defense chapter is going to have a new push after this visit of our defense minister. I'd like to a word on China and a word on Russia, and then I'll conclude very quickly. China, the Indians always, look at us and say, you are a little naive when it comes to China. You don't see the dangers that China poses, and they refer to, the Indian-Chinese problems they are facing at the border and elsewhere. We have now adopted a China strategy a couple of years ago, where we spell out that China is our relation to China is threefold, so to speak. China is an economic partner, but also a competitor and a systemic rival. So there is basically, we feel that there is a business opportunity in China, but there is also something we have to be very concerned about. That's the Chinese, expansion in the region, the Chinese aggression, in the Indo-Pacific, but also with its neighbors, and therefore we. Having learned the hard way after the Russia crisis, where Germany was dependent, 55% of German energy came from Russia, and we had to get that down to zero in 3 months, basically. And we had to change the energy mix, but this was only energy dependency. When we look at our economy, which is arguably the most globalized economy in the world, is so dependent on China that once Xi Jinping decides to turn the switch, we have a big problem. So basically, never put your eggs in one basket is the lecture we learn, and that's the government is now, it's called de-risking, trying to diversify German investment elsewhere, and that's where India also comes on the radar. We want to work with China under fair conditions. We want more sustainable and reciprocal economic and trade relations. But we draw a red line where our values and interests are concerned. At the same time, China will remain a key partner because it's so big for tackling global challenges, like climate crisis and sustainable development, global health. And we need to work with China on these points. So basically, that's what I'm telling is we have to walk a fine line between a competitor, a rival even, but also a indispensable partner to tackle the world's problems. And now a word to Russia, which is, for us very emotional, because Russia, we, the Germans, have an enormous sense of, responsibility and guilt when it comes to Russia, because Russia was basically the country that suffered by far the most during and after the Second World War. And we felt that against many advices of our European partners, that working with Russia and including Russia in a European security structure was basically indispensable. We felt that there would not be a European security structure without Russia, and we did really walk the extra mile to get Russia into a sort of a format that, even though it is a dictatorship, and even though the systems are completely different, and even though economically it's really weak, it's a weak country, we felt that including Russia is more important than excluding it. And there again, we failed. Yeah, we failed very clearly. We've seen that Russia, in spite of all the efforts, chose the way of aggression and started a war which it cannot win in the end. It's not a war that can be won by Russia. And I think it is a very, very big mistake that Russia has undertaken. And we have now, I would even say that at some stage, of course, we have to re-engage with Russia in a dialogue. At some stage, we have to try to get Russia at the table, but under current circumstances, these chances are very slim. So I'm afraid that this war will go on for a while, and we talked about the differences between India and Europe, and we in Europe would have hoped that India, although we think that there is a lot of overlap in our analysis when it comes to the situation we face in Eastern Europe, that India would have been a bit more vocal at times and say that they feel also that this is not a justified war, and it's bringing, it's catastrophic basically for everyone. Now, we have listened very carefully. The Prime Minister said this is not an era of war. This is really something that we can work with, and I feel that the Indian, the soft noise we hear from India is basically reflecting this analysis, and therefore we hear that very carefully and with great sympathy. So let me close by saying one cannot, in this very broad range relations we have with India, Germany, Europe, and India, you cannot overemphasize the importance of people-to-people contact in bilateral relations. We need, I said that before, skilled labor, and I hope it will come from India. We have mentioned that Germany is the third most popular study destinations for Indian students, and we are hoping to further increase in rank. Indian students are still the second, but very soon the first biggest group of foreign students in Germany. We see that 70% of the students would like to stay in Germany after finishing their studies. This is an opportunity for us. You should know that German education, higher education, is mostly for free. So Indian students going to Germany, they have to pay for their living costs, but they don't have to pay for university. That's a huge advantage when it comes to, for example, Australia or the US or the UK. So we have a constantly growing Indian diaspora in Germany, and Germany is a more popular destination also for many Indian citizens, although those who don't go to universities. So I would say what is lacking is the other way around. I would like to see a couple of German students in this room. I'm very sad to see that there is not enough interest from the German side to come to top universities in India. It would be great to have more interest on this level when it comes to India. So I would encourage you, once you finish here and you want to go abroad, look at Germany, look at what German universities are offering for master classes. You might, and they are taught in English, so there is not a language barrier. Although I understand that you even teach German here at this university, which I really like. So please feel free to contact us or the German Academic Exchange Service here for further inquiries. So I think the importance of German-Indian relations against the backdrop of current global geopolitical and geoeconomic cannot be overestimated. I think our two countries should strengthen ties relating to economy and trade, labor and migration, and strategic and defense cooperation. And I can tell you, it is an enormous privilege to be here on this landmark moment. There is an old diplomatic, somewhat desperate motto saying that never waste a crisis. I think there's no better place to never waste a crisis than for a German ambassador being in India. So it's, for me, it's a great time, and it's a great privilege to be sent by my country to this wonderful country. Thank you very much.
I'm going to keep it very short, but not without saying profound thanks to His Excellency Dr. Philipp Ackermann, Ambassador of Germany to India, not only for having taken out time on a busy work day and work week, but also for inspiring all of us. And I must support and reiterate the views expressed by the Vice Chancellor. Germany is one of the most favored destinations, and vice versa, and we will be fully committed to enhancing India-Germany relations through higher education. And we have been commemorating some of the important days and even activities through our Global Languages Center, Your Excellency, and we will be fully committed to continuing with these activities. And it's also very gladdening to see the enthusiasm of all the newly admitted students and even the returning students. And for those of you all studying at the School of International Affairs, it would be pertinent for you to know even your location in terms of spaces, because in India, post 1945, when the Indian School of International Studies was set up and later merged with the Jawaharlal Nehru University, that happened to be one of the foremost schools, and even now. But here your location is altogether a little more different because you have significant advantages to draw from other disciplines like law and public policy and art and architecture and journalism, so on and so forth. So it's going to be like well-rounded education that you're going to get here at the Jindal Global University. And I appeal to each one of you to stay fully committed and plan your education and career activities and take the advantage to the fullest during your higher education here at the university. On this particular note, I even thank the leadership of the school and all the faculty members for having convened this lecture, and my best wishes to all the students and faculty members for a wonderful academic session ahead. Thank you all very much.